From the big band years of the 40s, Artie Shaw and Begin the Begin.
Okay, I'm Paul Lamat, and I'm not exactly French, but it's a French name. In the tarot cards, the Lamat is in the French tarot, and it means the fool. So anyway, now that that's out of the way, I was in Aloha, Bobby and Rose. It was a hit movie in the 70s, directed by Floyd Mutrux. And I played Bobby, Diane Hull played Rose, and it was a car movie and had a lot of good music in it, and little action, some action, and romantic, and it had a little bit for everybody except old people like me now. I didn't have to audition. Floyd Mutrux loved me when he saw me in as Milner in American Graffiti, and he said he and his wife were in the theater and watching it, and they decided not too long after that, or maybe while they were watching it, said this guy can play Bobby, because they had just written the script and were looking around for casting, and they decided to get me. I mean, they didn't have a big budget, so they got me because I was, in the 70s, my price wasn't too high. Oh, that's not, it was 600 and something thousand. That's a mistake. No, it was 600,000, I think a little more after all was said and done, and which was very cheap then. That's even less than American Graffiti cost. Oh, I liked Floyd Mutrux. I met him, I think, in a restaurant, and he's a funny man and a very creative guy, and he was dressed sort of like a hippie, but that didn't bother me. And I read the script, which I really liked. I really wanted to play this part. This guy was kind of cool, but he was vulnerable. And Mutrux said, keep smiling. It was part of the character, it's sort of a con man smiling at people, and it wasn't my natural frame of reference to smile. I had been a boxer, and I was kind of, not mean, but sort of tough. And so he wanted me to loosen up, which I did for the part. We filmed the bulk of it in '73 in the fall and into November. And then we filmed some of it, not much, but some of it in '74. A few scenes and some stuff with Diane, and I forget now what was then. And then there was a long editing process, which I helped out with a little, going by this little house that Floyd had rented in Hollywood, where we were editing it, and they were editing it. And so I would stop by and maybe give a little advice now and then, and it just took a lot longer. I'm not sure why it took so long to edit, but it did. So it wasn't released that year. It was they waited until the next year to release it, '75, and it was successful. I think it made $35 million, which was big bucks in the mid '70s. I enjoyed working with Diane. She's very smart. She was actually too smart for the part of Rose, and Floyd tried to dumb her down a little bit, but he just couldn't contain her. She had that intelligence going on all the time. And we finally decided, well, okay, her character is not going to be going along with the program like in the script. In the script, the two of them were sort of similar. Two characters, Bobby and Rose, were similar. And she was as willing to go on the run after the incident in the liquor store as he was. But Diane couldn't help but feel that it didn't make sense, and she didn't feel like she was wanted to be a criminal type, and so it ended up looking like my character had to drag her along against her will, which was okay. It adds a little conflict and tension to the dramatic story. Well, I can't tell the end, so I'm not going to tell the end. Oh, I'm not a womanizer. I'm just kind of laid back and If I fall in love, I fall in love, which I have done. And then my heart's broken, it's broken. What can I tell you? Now with Diane, we became great friends, and in fact we went on the road to Washington, D.C., 75, 76, I believe it was, lobbying for a piece of legislation. And she helped me. I was going to go alone, try to meet with some congressmen and one senator I was going to meet with, but she went with me and helped me because it's not easy to walk into at least when you're a young person, to walk into a congressman's office and just present a case for his vote. They may not want to vote that way, and you have to argue your point without sounding like a dummy. And she was able to do that better than me, I think, in formulating her ideas and arguments. So we became very close during that period of time. I wish I had worked with her again in a movie, but I never did. This had to do with House Resolution 204, I believe it was, that Congressman Gonzalez put forth to call for reinvestigation of the Kennedy assassination, his Robert Kennedy assassination, the Martin Luther King assassination, and it didn't quite work out the way we wanted. I did radio interviews and television interviews, and I'm a little nervous about talking about it now. I shouldn't be, I suppose, but let's just say that there was an attempt on my life. I don't know who did it, but they put some bad stuff, arsenic in my food, in a hotel room, and I almost died. And I figured it had to do with this effort. Tim was wild. Tim, as you may or may not have heard, was rumored to have been Orson Welles' son. This was a big rumor which he never confirmed or denied. And I remember thinking, well, it's probably true. He looks like Orson Welles, and he's multi-talented. Tim could sing, and he's a fine actor, and play the guitar, and had that voice. And I kept thinking, well, if he isn't his son, then it's a good trick on all of us. And he sort of overwhelmed the movie. When he comes into the movie, I'm thinking, I thought I was a star of the movie. Here's Tim with his big voice and his swagger, but he plays this Texas character who's supposed to be that way. And it's funny because that part, I tried to get that part, a friend of mine in that part, as the Buford, I think the character's name is. I tried to get a friend of mine, tried to talk Floyd Mutrux, the director and the casting friend of mine, who was a virtually unknown actor at the time. And he didn't do good interviews. He was sort of introverted. And Floyd said, no, I'm going to go with Tim, because Floyd Mutrux and Tim McIntyre had been friends, were friends. And he cast him later as Alan Freed in American Hot Wax. Floyd did. But my friend, his name was Harrison Ford. And no, Floyd didn't want to give him that role. And I said, come on, I know this guy. He can act. He's a good actor. He's not impressive in a meeting, that's all. But that didn't happen. And so I'm sitting here thinking, now I tried to get Harrison into a movie that I was in. And I tried hard, pretty hard. And I failed. Now, maybe it's about time. Turnabout is fair play, as they say. I think it's time for Harrison to try to put me in one of his movies. What do y'all think? Robert Carradine, I liked him a lot. I still do. He was interested in fast cars. As a matter of fact, there's a scene in Aloha, Bobbing a Rose where we were at the drag strip with the Camaro, and we were shooting the scene where I was supposed to pull up near the starting line for the drag races, and they were having competition that night at this, I think it was Irwindale drag strip. So we were taking advantage of this, all these cars, hot rods around, and the racing in the background. And I said to Carradine in the car, he was sitting next to me, and I said to him, look over there, that's the starting line, it's right there. And they were filming us from one side, we were just parked. I said, I could drive over there and get in that line, jump in that line, cut in the line, and with this car I could pull up to the starting line for the drag strip, and the starter wouldn't know that I wasn't part of the competition, and I would just pull up, and because they were, they were having races one after the other, and so I said I could, and I was kidding. I said I could just drive over there and get in a race, and then I could race, because they don't know I'm not registered. And so Carradine, you know what he said? He dared me. He said, "Go ahead, do it, Paul." "Okay, big shot, let's see you do it." Now, I was young and restless, as they say. So I did it. I drove over there, I got in the line up in the front. I drove, it was smooth. I went up, they were racing, 2 cars would take off, then they pull up, 2 more cars would take off, and then I pulled up. Some poor guy I was racing against who didn't know what he was in for, and I had never done that before, although I had drag raced around town like I wasn't supposed to. And I watched the Christmas tree, they call it, the lights come down, and I took off. And I'm embarrassed to say I really didn't know what I was doing, because when I had raced before, I had stick shift and a couple hot rods that I had. I used to just wind them out and then shift them, because hey, when you wind the engine out, you're going faster and faster, right? So I figured that's how you go as fast as you can. Well, this was a high performance engine. This car, the 68 Camaro, was a great car. James Garner had used it for his racing team before this. And Bobby is yelling at me, "Shift, shift," because he knew that you don't rev those things all the way up, they'll explode. So I shifted when he told me. And because of that, then I pulled ahead and beat this guy. So they filmed Fraker, Bill Fraker, William Fraker, this fantastic cinematographer. He made sure when he saw me going over toward the starting line, he just told the cameraman to go with it. So they filmed me go over there and filmed the start of the race. And they didn't get the end because that was a quarter mile down. So they used it in the movie. They used the start of the race, and then they put some other footage of 2 cars ending the race. And anyway, I got back. I was so nervous. My leg was shaking. This leg, from the one I was shifting with. I don't know what that is. I guess it's adrenaline. It's blood coursing through. My leg was shaking. And I drove the car back around to the movie set. And Floyd Mutrix came over to the window and leaned in, and he said, Paul, you shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have done it. Because I could have broken the car, and we had a low budget film, and
it's not insured.
We had insurance, but then they probably shut the film down or something. I don't know. But it's not insured for me doing something reckless like that. The insurance company's not going to go for it. So, but then what did Floyd say after he reprimanded me about that? He's in the privacy of leaning in the car window. He says, "But I'm happy you did it. It was great. I'm glad you did it." Yeah, I hardly knew Edward James almost when I was working on Aloha, Bobby and Rose. I did the pool room scene with him, and that's about it. I didn't realize he was going to go on to win an Emmy. I'd have been friendlier with him then. Part of the lengthy editing process was finding the right songs to fit different sequences in the movie. It wasn't that Floyd wanted everything to be literal, but he wanted it to have a similar mood. The scenes, or the driving on the freeway, or whatever the scene was, he wanted a song in the background that kind of reflected the feelings that would accompany those sequences. And he had to get those songs, and he tried out various pieces of music. And I remember when he finally found Benny and the Jets. He heard it on the radio, and he came into the editing room after hearing it, and he was all excited. because he knew in his heart that he had found the song the way he wanted it artistically for his movie. Even though on the surface, Benny and the Jets doesn't fit the movie at all. You know, it's about a rock group, about Benny, the singer. It doesn't fit, but it does have this strange sound connection with the characters' experiences. And I know the audiences felt the same way. Yeah, she was Tim McIntyre's wife. Sweet. She was very sweet. I remember she's kind of bubbly. I don't know if that was the character or it was her or not, but that added a little life into the into the movie. I'm very happy with the final results of the movie. Very happy. Trying to think if there's anything I'm disappointed in. No, can't think of anything. I would have worked out at the gym more before the movie because I could have been in better shape. I was working out at the gym, in the boxing gym downtown, the Main Street gym, but not enough. Of course, I feel that way about several of my movies. That I wish I had worked out more, like not American Graffiti. American Graffiti, I was happy with it, but more American Graffiti, I wasn't quite as bulked up as I wished I had been. So in Aloha, Bobby and Rose, I wish I had worked out more. Although it was okay, I was in pretty good shape. And Diane was skinny. Diane Hall was skinny, so it didn't matter. But I can't think of anything in the movie that I wish I had done differently. Well, a couple of the critics were not kind to it. And as I recall, in the East Coast, some of the critics just couldn't relate to it. They just didn't like it. And the characters, by today's standards, it's not important, but in those days, the characters were actually theoretically criminals. Not much, but theoretically. And they were the leads in the movie, the lead characters in the movie, and I think some critics took offense at that and didn't warm up to the story that way. Now, times have changed. Now we got a lot of movies with a lot of bad characters, much worse than Bobby and Rose were. Bobby and Rose were innocent compared to the characters we see in movies these days. I'm happy with my performance. It was a difficult role in a way because the character wasn't as cool and tough as he wanted to be. So I had to play it like I was trying to be cool and tough rather than actually being cool and tough. Like, for instance, some of Elvis Presley's early movies. That guy was cool and tough, period. But Bobby Eckert, this character, I wanted him to be striving toward that type of personality, but just falling short of it. Well, George Lucas told me that he was going to make this sequel to American Graffiti, but it was against his will because he didn't own the rights to the movie then. He does now. But Universal announced that was their plan. They were going to make a sequel with or without him, and so he decided to be a part of it to protect whatever creative sensibility he had in the first one, to keep it from being completely trashed. But he didn't want to direct it, and I think that was a huge mistake. If he wanted to be a part of the movie, then he should have directed it. Now, the film went in such a different direction, except actually for my character. My character was still racing and still, fairly tough and all that stuff, and attracted to women and all the things that my characterization of John Milner in the original American Graffiti contained. But the rest of the movie was totally different than the original movie. And that's okay, fine to make a different movie if you want to make a different movie, but you shouldn't really call it a sequel because it didn't come off as a sequel. The character in American Graffiti and the character in Aloha, Bobby and Rose are very similar. It's true. I would say that the character in American Graffiti is more genuinely what he appears to be. And the character in Aloha, Bob and Rose, is, like I have said, was more trying to be cool, trying to be tough, trying to be attractive to women, and a little weak inside, because I don't think the character in American Graffiti would have run to escape the police like the character in Aloha Bob and Rose does. I think the character in American Graffiti would have just taken it, whatever the result is. Let the police come, let them find out what happened. You know, whatever the result is, whatever the ramifications were of some mistake and death that occurs, that he can be responsible for in a way, blamed for. And the character of Aloha by Rose, he took off, man. He ran. So that's sort of a. They're not much different. Like I said, when Floyd Mutrux saw American Graffiti, he thought of me playing Bobby in his script. That was after I had been poisoned, like I told you guys. And I wasn't feeling too good. And that's the best I could do at the time. I was sick filming the movie. I tried not to reveal it on screen. I am an actor, but I didn't feel like I was up to par. I don't know what I would say. I was at 75% of what I should have been. The same way with Jimmy the Kid, the film after that. I was 75%. It took me years and a lot of nutritional, homeopathic remedies to get this poison out of my body. And that's where this nutritionist helped me that Brian James told me about. I'm actually sorry I played Mickey Hughes in The Burning Bed, because I've gotten so much flack about it over the years, particularly from women. I've had women, more than one, actually look me in the face and say, "I hate you." I hated you as the character, I hate you, because I played it so realistically that they were affected viscerally and don't like me anymore. And I've had people, even men, men are more complimentary about my performance than women. Women will grudgingly say, "Yeah, you were great because I hated you so much." But some men will say, I've heard one guy told me, he said, "I couldn't watch you in anything else after seeing The Burning Bed because I kept thinking of you as this mean guy." And I had no idea that would be damaging to my career, but I think it has hurt my career. I think casting women look at me askance. They think I'm like that. In fact, my wife at the time I was married, she said some of her friends, not too many, but some of her, maybe two of her friends actually asked her after they saw the movie, "Now, Paul, does Paul ever get abusive? Does he ever beat you? Has he ever hit you?" And she had to defend me and say, no, it's because I played it like it's method acting. I learned it in New York, and it backfired on me. My life hasn't been all bad, like I've been saying. I did get the French kiss Farrah Fawcett. I didn't want to meet Melvin. It pissed him off. And Don Phillips, the producer, told him this. When we started making a movie, Melvin wanted to meet me. Naturally. I mean, whatever. Not naturally, but... And I didn't want to meet him. And the reason I didn't want to meet him, I didn't want to say. But I'll say it now. He knows it now. And I didn't meet him. I didn't. Call me crazy. But I didn't want to meet the guy and talk to him because I didn't want to think he was a fraud. He could have been a fraud. I think the majority of people think he's a liar, think he's a forger, think he's a fraud. the majority of people do in the world that I've met up with and heard about and read about. They think he's just a con man. And for all I know, and knew at the time, he was a con man. I'm not trying to make this too complicated, but the script, this great script that Bo Goldman wrote, took the point of view that Melvin was telling the truth. That he did meet Howard Hughes, that he did meet him, that he did save his life out there in the desert. And that Howard Hughes would have been grateful and would have put him in his will. He was kind of crazy guy. Howard Hughes would have put him in the will for 1/16 of his fortune. And that Melvin didn't forge the will. That's the script. He took that position. And that's the position I was going to play. That's the role I was going to play, an honest guy. And I didn't want to meet Melvin and think, oh no, this guy's a slick, phony fraud.
Fake milkman.
And that's going to screw up my performance, which it can. If you know something, it can do it subtly or even not so subtly. Can mess with your artistic genitals, as I heard one person say. That's that creativity in yourself. I don't really relate to the films nowadays. They're not deep enough for me, I guess. Not that I'm the deepest person in the world, but I like substance is the word I should use. I want there to be more substance to the story. Now, Moonlight had a lot of substance. Okay, there's no question about it. It's just that the story seemed to meander along and didn't mean that much to me. I mean, it's almost like it was like a coming-of-age story in a way, a character-driven story, but it just didn't impact me. And I haven't seen La La Land. I heard that was great. I don't go out to the theaters much. I'm like an old fogey. You know, I'll sit here and drink beer and watch TV. I'll watch movies on TV, but usually they're older ones. Maybe I'm a has-been. I mentioned that to a couple of people. I said, well, I'm just kind of a has-been. And they go, oh, no, you're not a has-been, Paul. No. And I'm thinking, yeah? I don't know about that. Why don't they hire me? This is the first interview I've done in a long time. I almost didn't do this one because I've been turning them down. But I thought, I'm feeling kind of 5, 10, 15, 20%. I can't, it's hard to judge. Better than before when I didn't want to do anything 6 months ago or a year ago, 3 months ago. And why not? I'll take it. So I don't feel bad right now. I feel pretty good. You guys helped me get well by asking me all these questions.